Being a dad means you get a lot less time to game. If I could only keep one of the new Xbox Series consoles, which one would I actually keep? Let's find out. Hey, I'm Sam with Busy Dad Gaming. I believe that dads should be able to game and feel relaxed and recharged so they can give the best to their families. I do that by helping busy dads find the best games so they can actually relax and decompress from their day-to-day. Now, you dads out there, I'm sure you can relate to this. I have a nearly 4-month-old. I work full-time. I have a side hustle. I have family responsibilities, and taking care of myself tends to slip to the bottom of the priority list at times. That means when I do actually get time to game, that time is very precious to me. Now, before I became a dad, I went and sat down to pre-order the Series X. I didn't have a ton of information to go on, and I tend to be an early adopter, so that typically ends up being quite often. But when something is so brand new, there's a struggle to figure out which one you should actually go with. So let's take a look at the X and the S, look at the similarities, the differences, and make sure that you come into it fully informed so you can make the best decision on how you want to spend your gaming time. So let's look at the differences first. Now, the most obvious differences are the form factor and the price. Now, the Series X comes in at just under 10 pounds, and you're looking at $499 for that one, or around 35 bucks per month if you're doing the Microsoft All Access plan. If you're looking at the Series S, then you're looking at just over 4 pounds, and that comes in at $299 or around 26 bucks if you're doing the Microsoft All Access. The other key difference from a form factor perspective is the Series X does have a disc tray. The Series S is all digital. The next big difference is the graphical power these two systems can put out. Now, the Series X can go ahead and do 12 teraflops of compute performance, which can provide up to 4K, and the Series S can do around 4 teraflops of compute power, and that'll get you around 1440p with potential upsampling to 4K. Now, the key piece here is teraflops isn't a potential differentiator when it comes to actual performance, but it is in this particular case as a differentiator between the two because it is an apples to apples comparison. They're both using the same architecture and the same micro architecture. So in this particular case, the Series X obviously is more powerful than the Series S, but me personally, I was seduced by the power. Another difference between these two systems is the storage capacity that they come with inherently. Now, the Series X, you're going to be looking at 1 terabyte of storage internally, whereas the Series S, you're going to be looking at 512 gigabytes of storage. Now, another main difference is, as they say, frames win games. And in this particular case, the Series X can potentially do up to 4K at 120 hertz, which is 120 frames per second, whereas the Series S can technically do up to 120 frames per second, but most typically at lower resolutions on their prescribed games. So when you're looking at the Game Pass and you're looking at the FPS Boost that has been recently expanded, that's essentially what you're looking at. The Series X and the Series S do have FPS Boost on their respective systems, but the main difference is what resolution is that being boosted at to produce that actual frames per second. Now, the last big difference between these two systems is what kind of TV or monitor that you need to actually take advantage of these consoles. The Series X, for example, runs an HDMI 2.1, which will allow you up to 4K at 120 frames per second, whereas the Series S is looking at HDMI 2.0, which will allow you up to 1440p at 120 frames per second. Depending on which system you go with will actually differentiate between which TV or monitor that is going to be required to actually get the most out of these systems. Now, those are the big differences between these two systems. So let's go ahead and take a look at the similarities now. Now, based in comments in previous videos, I've gotten a lot more information around some of these particular areas. So one of the main similarities between these two systems is that they do use the Navi architecture and they are using the RDNA 2 micro architecture. So again, from an apples to apples perspective, they're both using the same infrastructures. The next big similarity is that both systems are using ray tracing. The only real difference is the performance at which that ray tracing is being applied. The next big similarity is quick resume, and it's something that I personally really have enjoyed. Being able to jump between Mass Effect 3 and Forza and Torchlight 3 and being able to do it quickly really has been something that has made it very easy to jump between games. Another big similarity is that all next-gen games will end up playing on both the Series X and the Series S. So you don't have to really pick which Xbox One or Series S or Series X games that you're going to have to choose. You can go ahead and just pick the latest and greatest and it'll play across both systems. Now, speaking of next-gen games. Something that both systems also have in the inherent ability to do is smart delivery. So the Series S, whenever you go ahead and you go download a particular game, it will recognize which version of the game you have. So in this case, the S version or the X version, or if you're going back to the Xbox One versions, it will recognize which version you need and download the applicable assets for those games. Now, the next similarity that we jump into is really hand in hand, and that is between backwards compatibility and Game Pass. Now, regardless whether you go with the Series X or the Series S, you have that awesome backwards compatibility list, and Game Pass is also compatible across both systems. So the only big difference between these two really comes down to the FPS boost and the resolution that those boosts are coming in at. So regardless, the similarities of them being able to play all the latest and greatest and the backwards compatibility games on Game Pass is awesome. Now, kind of going back a little bit to the game delivery piece, another similarity that the X and the S both have is cloud saves. Now, the cloud save can go ahead and jump between the two systems, and I've been doing this here on Mass Effect here recently, where I'll go ahead and I'll play on the Series X and then go ahead and go upstairs and I'll go ahead and start playing on the Series S, and the cloud save will go ahead and transfer between both systems. So you're not having to sit there and go between and figure out, transfer between them and do all these different things just as a workaround to try to get your saves to work. Now, this does bring me to the Seagate 1TB expansion card. Now, if you're looking at games, you can go ahead and load games, specifically the Series S or Series X games, because those do have to be on that particular card to be able to play their respective games as a Series X or S version. But that storage card is swappable, and you can put saves on there as well if you want to, so you're not having to rely on the clouds if, for example, you don't have an internet connection. But you can go ahead and just load your games onto it. You can go ahead and load your saves onto it, all your DLC, and just hot swap them between the systems, and it just works. Now, the next piece I want to talk about is the USB expandable storage. Both systems can use a USB SSD or an HDD. Now, the big caveat here is if it is a Series X or S game, you won't be able to typically run it off of those drives, but any Xbox One or backwards compatibility type game will be able to run off of those particular drives. So if you're looking to use a USB hard drive solution, you will need at least USB 3.1 to enable that kind of functionality and have it actually be useful. So now that we know the differences and the similarities between the Series X and the S, which one would I actually keep if I had to choose between the two? So for me personally, I love being an early adopter. I love diving into tech. So in this particular case, I would pick the Series X, hands down, no question. And that brings me to a dad's perspective. Time overall is precious, and so ultimately it comes down to what kind of games do you want to play and where can you go play them. For me personally, I tend to play most of my third-party games on the Series X because the controller is just more comfortable for me. But if I want to go play Horizon Forbidden West or God of War Ragnarok or even Breath of the Wild 2, I have to go to those respective systems. I'm not a console wars person. I don't care if I have a PS5, a Series X, a Series S, a Switch, an RTX 3080. I'll go to whatever system has the games I want to play. And ultimately, that is really what it comes down to as a dad. When you're looking at what system that is going to be the best for you, for me, the Series X is that one thing that I would pick over all the other ones if I had to choose, and I would go ahead and just use it because it has the games that I want to play. But now I want to hear from you dads out there. Have you managed to get either a Series X or a Series S? What have your thoughts been about each system? And if you could only pick one, which one would it actually be? Make sure to leave that in the comments. And for those of you still looking for either a Series X or an S, which one are you leaning towards and why? Put that also in the comments below. Now, if you want to learn more information either about the Series X or the Series S, make sure to go ahead and look at their respective reviews. And if you have questions, make sure to put those in the comments. I'm more than happy to help, and I'll see you in the next video.